Have you ever had a project that you wanted to accomplish, but you thought it was going to be very difficult and a lot of work until you actually got to doing it? And then you found that it was so much fun when you put it together that you couldn't wait to make another one? Well, that's exactly what happened when I made this rug. And I can't wait to do another one and show you how I did it. So welcome back to the sewing room. I'm going to be showing you how to take a chindi rug like this and turn it into a wrapped corded rug like this. Now, what got me inspired to make a rug like this was watching tutorials on YouTube where people will take the jelly roll fabric and use batting, fold it in on itself, zigzag it together to make a big circular rug. And then I've seen other videos where people would take their fabric and wrap cording. And I really liked that a lot better because I wanted my rug to have more firmness to it than just the fabric and the batting. And I also found that this was going to be a lot more cost effective than buying jelly roll fabric because jelly rolls can run you anywhere from $15 to $30 for a roll of fabric. And it usually takes about 2 jelly rolls to make a rug. I got my chindi rug that was all black and gray from a yard sale. Cost me like $1. And the cording that I used is this 50-foot braided cotton rope that I got from Lowe's. Cost me about $4.50 for this pack. And I used 3 of them to make this rug. And I had so much fun making this rug that I want to make another one even larger for my bedroom. And I'm going to use this chindi rug to do it with. And so the first thing I have to do is cut this apart and see what kind of strips I have inside. Now my hope is that inside this rug I will find long, wide strips of fabric, because in the first rug I took apart, it had strips that were either very short or too skinny. And as I continue to pull things apart, I am pleasantly surprised that they are indeed long, wide strips. And I am falling madly in love with some of these colors and prints. And now that I have a giant pile of colorful strips, it's off to the ironing board to press them all flat. Now as I go through these, I can see that most of the fabrics are non-stretch and have been cut across the width of the fabric. I'm also grouping them in light colors together. I have blue, green, yellow, orange, red, and white. I believe I have more white strips than any of the other colors, and I'm trying to decide in what order to wrap the cording in. If I wanted some kind of a rainbow effect, how would I do that? Or do I want to throw them all in a big pile and just pick from them randomly? Okay, that's done. Now it's on to the cutting. For this step, you will need a cutting mat and a rotary cutter. Yes, you can use scissors to do this part, but it is 10 times easier and faster with a rotary cutter because I am not measuring these strips. I just want them roughly 1 to 1¼ inch wide, which I will explain why in more detail when I get to the wrapping stage. For now, I just want to cut these pieces down and clean up the edges just a bit. Now I'm not going to show me cutting through all of these, but you can see that some of these fabrics are not perfectly straight, and I'm trying to cut as many strips as I can out of each piece. I will say that I found if the strips were on the stretchy side, it was easier to wrap the cording with when I made the first rug, but with the fabric cut on the straight, it will work just fine. This is also a great project if you're looking for a way to use up leftover fabric, especially if you can cut strips at least 12 inches long or longer. It does not work well with short strips as you're not going to be sewing your strips together before wrapping your cording. So welcome to my OCD brain and the way it works with fabric and why I'm sorting all of these strips by color. You see, I'm a very organized person who needs order, structure, and things to be useful. I'm the type of sewist that needs a purpose for my fabrics. I don't usually buy fabric just because it's on sale. I only buy the fabric I need for whatever project I'm working on. I feel very guilty if I have a stash that's been lying around that is serving no purpose. It's the main reason why I've been purging so much from my sewing room as of lately to maximize every bit of space I have in this one small room and to purge what is not, in my eyes, useful. This pile of strips is quite overwhelming for me and why I've decided that I don't want to just choose from them randomly for my rug. No, that would cause me way too much anxiety and trying to make them look random. So I'm doing the best that I can to put them in order. So here we have the progression of my colors. And am I being a bit OCD about this? Yes, I am. I want to use all of the strips that I have, and I wanted them to go into a specific progression of colors. So I have white here at the end, goes through some pinks, then through the yellows, on through the orange, then through a tan and a green, onto the teals, which then progresses into the reds, a little bit of purple, and off into the blues. What I wanted was to go from the teals to the blues and then the reds, but from the color scheme of these strips, I felt that this was about the best layout there is. Now I have a lot of white strips. I don't know if I'm going to use all of them because I don't need a huge white center for this rug, although I am making this very large. I'm using 5 packs of the 50-foot cording. I guess I'll have to make that judgment call after I start wrapping and sewing the center of it together. So for this next part, you're going to need a handful of little clips like this, some glue sticks. You're going to need your cording. Now, you don't have to go to Lowe's to get this. I just found that this was about the most economical way to buy this. I was wrong about the price. These are $4.34. And when I undo this, I just let it flop on the floor down here, and that works pretty good. Now, most people will make a circular rug. I'm making mine oval. So what you have to do is wrap quite a bit of cording for your center before you stitch any of this together. And the reason for the glue sticks is because I'm not stitching my strips together, and this gives me a little extra hold as I'm working with my strips. Start by applying a bit of glue to the end of the first strip. Place the end of the cording halfway across the strip and fold over the other side. Next, fold the end over so the cording is completely enclosed. Then start wrapping the cord. Once you get a few inches of the cord wrapped, stick the end under your presser foot to use as an extra hand and continue to wrap the cord. Once you get to the end, add some more glue and clip it in place. And as you can see, this is not enough for the center of my rug. I need to wrap the cord with at least one more strip so that I will have a long center. So to add your next strip, you just dab on a bit of glue to the end, remove the clip from the end of the first strip, and then add your new one. Once you get the second strip started, clip it in place and continue to wrap your cording. Now I have enough cording wrapped for my center. To sew it together, I'm starting on the folded end. I'm using the widest zigzag stitch on my machine and sewing right down the middle, making sure I catch both strips of the wrapped cording. But don't worry if you miss a spot or two, because you could always go back and sew it up closed. Now I'm very sorry for this very bad camera angle, but before I could continue sewing around the open end, I needed to add another strip. And that's basically the process in making this rug. Each time you come to the end of a strip, you stop and add on another one, and then continue sewing it to one side, going round and round the center. It really is a simple process. Now, can you wrap more cording at one time? Yes, you can if you prefer to do it that way. The sewists I've watched who use the cut jelly roll fabric sew their strips together first, then add all the batting, and then sew it all together at one time. Sewing it the way I'm showing eliminates the step of sewing the strips together. And this way, I can be sure I'm wrapping my cording securely and sewing it down right away so nothing comes unraveled. It really is up to you in what you prefer to do. And so far, I'm liking where this is going, but I think I need to add a couple more rows of white around the center before adding the next color. Okay, so I added another row all the way around, and I think this is enough for the center of my rug. Here is an up-close look at what this looks like. And now I get to start adding all of my colors. Now, if your strips are not cut from a stretchy fabric, the one thing you need to do when adding it to your cording is to add it on at an angle. This will help you wrap it around the cording so it doesn't get too bunched up, if that makes sense. As I wrap my strips, I'm using my right hand to pull down on the strip to keep it angled. And at any point, if I need to stop, I just clip it in place. So why do I want my strips to be about 1 inch wide and not wider? Well, I found with a wider strip, it added extra bulk around the cording, and the strips were overlapped a whole lot more, which covered up a lot of the pretty patterning in the fabrics. When I come to the end of my cording and need to add the next strand on, here's what I do. And I'm using black thread to demonstrate this. I stitch through the end of the new cording and then through the end of the first one and just pull the two ends together. I stitch through them back and forth a couple of times to hold the new cording in place. If you don't want to hand stitch them together like I'm doing, you can use some Scotch tape to hold them in place together before wrapping it. Then I continue wrapping the cording and sew it down. So before I finish my rug, now that I've come to the very last color, the red, and I'll explain how I ended up with the red at the end instead of the blue here in a minute. Since I was changing my thread color one last time, I wanted to show you that yes, you can take your strips and wrap all of your cording first, and then go back and sew it all around your rug. It's one reason why you need the clips. Yes, I'm using the glue to kind of secure the ends in place, but it's always best to use a clip at the start and end of each strip. And as you can see, I have a long piece of my reds to sew in place. And so I'll be back to show you the final product. But first, let me show you how I sew the end now that I've sewn on all of my strips. I simply wrap the cording just past the end and then fold over the fabric like this. I cut off a bit of the extra fabric and wrap the rest of it around the end of the cording and sew it down. Well, that's about it, and it's time for the big reveal. Well, here it is. My rug is complete, and I am so thrilled in the way this turned out. I am in love with all of these different colors. And I bet you're wondering how I ended up with the red on the outside versus the blue. Well, as I was sewing, I did interchange some of the colors. Just going through the strips, there was a natural flow in the progression of colors. And I just felt as the green transitioned into the blues and so on, that there was enough reds to put the reds on the outside versus the opposite way around. And I am really thrilled at the way it looks because that's exactly what I wanted in the first place. Now, did I use all of my strips? No, I did not. I actually found this extra pink strip hiding amongst the reds when I was moving things around. And it would have been nice to have used it because then it would have made a complete pink circle around here. And I found, as I was sewing this, it was nice to have enough strips to make a complete circle of each color because then it makes it look a lot more even. I also did not use these blue lacy strips. They were a little too bright. And also these faded green strips. And also I did not use these purple ones because there just wasn't enough fabric. Would I do this again? Oh, absolutely. I think that this is something that I will definitely do again in the future. This project took 4 complete packs of the 50-foot cording. I did get into the 5th package, but as you can see, this is as far as I got. Now, do I mind that it's a little crooked here? No, I don't, because the colors came out so pretty that that part does not bother me. And I did press this on my ironing board. It was a little warped after it was finished, but it seems to have laid out a lot flatter. And I think once I put it on the floor, it will be just fine. Now, one thing I will say is that when I did the red, I wrapped all the strips around the cording, and I really liked that because then I was able to just sew around and around with all of the red. And I think if I ever do this again in the future, I will definitely take the time to wrap the cording first and then sew them all together. And I hope this video inspires you to take on a project that you've been wanting to do for a while that you may think is a little more challenging than what you're normally used to doing. I know for me, my only regret is that I didn't do this sooner. I thought it was going to be a lot more challenging than what it actually was. And I found that as I was sitting there sewing and wrapping all these strips, it was a lot of fun. And I'm definitely going to do it again in the future. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button and stay tuned as the sewing madness continues.